Dear students, good morning. Today, let us continue the second part of the text, where you are going to see that how both the sides of the soldiers continue to share memories, continue to share their laughter and food on the occasion of Christmas. Actually, both the sides of the soldiers want an escape from the war, from the turmoil that they were going through. So they tried to find some memories, or they tried to create some memories on the occasion of Christmas. They craved for peace. They wanted to move away from that situation of pain, sadness, and longing for one's own near and dear ones. So they wanted some stability in their lives. They wanted to move away from the turmoil that was going through or happening at that period of time. So they wanted to bring peace into their world. Students, let's read. You cannot imagine, dearest Connie, my feelings as I looked into the eyes of the Fritz officer who approached me, hand outstretched. Hansolf, he said, gripping my hand warmly and holding it. I'm from Dusseldorf. I play the cello in the orchestra. Happy Christmas. Orchestra. Happy Christmas. To hold someone's hand warmly means to make that person feel comfortable and feel familiar with the other one. So, the officer had made him somewhat felt comfortable and like he was one of his own family members, or giving him an informal touch as such. And he introduced himself that he was from Dusseldorf and he played cello in the orchestra. So let's see what is the meaning of the word cello. A musical instrument like a large violin. So it's a musical instrument basically which is used in the orchestra, or at that point of time definitely it was in use and it used to be played in orchestra. So he told him Happy Christmas. He had given, or he had forwarded his informal gesture, or better to say, on the occasion of Christmas, something happy or a gesture of friendliness, saying himself or wishing him as Happy Christmas. Now see, Captain Jim Macpherson, I replied. So he told his name. In return, he told that he was Captain Jim Macpherson. And a happy Christmas to you too. I am a school teacher from Dorset in the west of England. So he introduced further himself. And a happy Christmas to you too. I am a school teacher from Dorset. So he introduced his position or his actual profession as a school teacher, and he was from Dorset. Ah, Dorset, he smiled. I know this place. I know it very well. So he was familiar with that place very well. He was familiar, or he used to know that place very well. So, Dorset. We shared my rum ration and his excellent sausage. Actually, they shared whatever they had. One shared his rum ration, okay, and one shared his sausage. Means one shared or one had given allowance for wine, while another had shared his excellent or tasty canned minced meat. And we talked, Connie, how we talked. So they talked with each other, and the manner or mannerism was important to be noticed, or it was very important that how they talked with each other. He spoke almost perfect English, so the officer on the other side had spoken perfect English, good English. But it turned out that he had never set foot in Dorset. So, how was he saying earlier that he knew Dorset well, but from his experience and all, it was seen that he seemed to had gone to Dorset never ever, but he had told. However, let's read. Never ever been to England. He had learned all he knew of England from school. So, whatever he knew of England, it was from his own school and from reading books in English. So, whatever he used to read about England, all those were from his books of English, imparted in his own school. His favorite writer was Thomas Hardy, or it is better to say, his favorite writer was Thomas Hardy. His favorite book, Far from the Madding Crowd. So out there in no man's land, we talked of Bathsheba and Gabriel Oak and Sergeant Troy and Dorset. He had a wife and a son, born just 6 months ago. So after he shared his likes and dislikes specifically in regard to his favorite book that he loved, Far from Madding Crowd, and all the characters from there. So after he shared that, he had a wife and one son. So he had a very young son, and he was or he had taken birth just 6 months ago when he was sharing that very incident. So from them or from then, it was just 6 months ago that his son had taken birth. As I looked about me, there were huddles of khaki and grey everywhere. So there were men or groups of soldiers present everywhere, all over no man's land, smoking, laughing, talking, drinking, eating. So they were sharing moments of freedom with each other. They were sharing even cigarettes. Then they had a heartful laughter. Then they had also been seen talking to each other, drinking with each other, and eating or sharing each other's food. So they shared many informal yet cheerful moments with each other, being considered as enemies also from countries or from the countries those which were facing one another or considered, or countries being considered as enemies to one another. Now let's see. So, after they shared their own foods, then drinks, then other moments. Now let's read. Hansolf and I shared what was left of your wonderful Christmas cake, Connie. He thought the marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. I agreed. We agreed about everything, and he was my enemy. There never was a Christmas party like it, Connie. So, students, it's very common or it's very usual that something strange or something even being strange, if beautiful happens, then we people, specifically those who are rendering such service or services to their respective nations, feel very happy or feel that they have moments to cherish forever. So, the moments were getting created like that they feel somewhat or something that they could, or some things that they could cherish forever. Then someone, I don't know who, brought out a football. Great coats were dumped in piles to make goalposts. And the next thing we knew, it was Tommy against Fritz out in the middle of no man's land. So a football match had begun. Okay, dumping their great coats, which were making goalposts. Hansolf and I looked on and cheered, clapping our hands and stamping our feet to keep out the cold as much as anything. So they were having fun with each other. Those soldiers were having fun with each other. There was a moment when I noticed our breaths mingling in the air. So breaths mingling in the air between us means they were feeling that very moment of emotion or filled with emotion of informality, filled with emotions which showed that they were familiar to each other or they belonged to that same condition where they craved for freedom, they craved for those happy moments. He saw it too and smiled. Jim Macpherson, he said after a while, I think this is how we should resolve this war. A football match. No one dies in a football match. No children are orphaned. No wives become widows. So this is a bitter truth, students, that in war or in a war, only we have losses. There is a loss of someone's father or someone's husband or someone's son, like that. But in a football match, there is no loss. Although we do consider football match as less essential, but practically if we see that football match only gives, or for which it is a situation that is vital than the war, that prioritizes peace over violence, and no one suffers any kind of loss. Now let's read. I would prefer cricket, I told him. Then we Tommies could be sure of winning, probably. We laughed at that, and together we watched the game. Sad to say,
Connie Fritz own. So the Germans own 2-1. They had been the winner. But as Hansolf generously said, our goal was wider than theirs, so it wasn't quite fair. Actually, the enemy or the soldiers who were on the side of Hansulf or the Britishers, they had played quite well, but the game they had lost to Germans had shown the truth of life, that even after playing well, someone can lose. So over here, Britishers or the team of Britishers had been defeated and Germans had won.
The time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished. The schnapps and the rum and the sausage had long since run out, and we knew it was all over. So, those were all had run out, or those were finished before a long time. Next, see. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped he would see his family again soon and the fighting would end and we could all go home. So, the fighting, there was a hope that the fighting would end soon and all they could go to their respective homes for which they longed for a long time. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides. Hansel said, "Take care, Jim Macpherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you." He saluted and walked away from me slowly, unwillingly, I felt. So the soldiers were so tired of that turmoil that they wanted only peace. And from this very expression, you can see, students, that he didn't wish bad luck for his own enemy. Rather, he saluted him and walked away from him unwillingly, as they had shared some peaceful moments, some moments of joy, some moments which they will cherish forever in their lives So he saluted him and walked away unwillingly. He turned to wave just once and then became one of the hundreds of grey-coated men drifting back towards their trenches. He turned back to wave just once, means to give his moments of freedom once again a priority and say goodbye to his friend for a temporary period of time, and then became like one of those hundreds of soldiers in grey coat drifting back towards his own trench. So as they headed back towards their ditches, so he also headed back towards his own ditch to hide himself from his enemies once again. That night, back in our dugouts, we heard them singing a carol. So singing a religious song, singing it quite beautifully. It was still gnashed, silent night. Our boys gave them a rousing chorus of wild shepherds watched. So we exchanged carols for a while. So over here it's written, we exchanged carols for a while, means they exchanged religious songs which were expressing happy gestures, or which were revealing to happy gestures, which were songs of happiness. So they were being sung for a while, and then we all fell silent. So they all turned silent. We had our time of peace and goodwill, a time I will treasure as long as I live. So definitely students, this is a rare moment when enemies of both the sides, or soldiers who are known to be the enemies of each other, are celebrating something. So they had shared that moment too. Now let's see. Dearest Connie, by Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. I know from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. We shall be together again soon, I'm sure of it. So, dearest Connie, by Christmas time next year, hopeful of this very thing, that by the Christmas time next year, the war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. So, it will prove nothing but which had taken place something before a long time, and it would be only known as something terrible. So, distant and terrible memory. I know from all that happened today how much both armies, so both the sides of the soldiers, long for peace, or they longed for peace. So, how they longed for peace, and both the sides of the soldiers wanted that. We shall be together again soon, I'm sure of it. So, they loved those informal gestures, those moments of happiness. So, they cherished those moments of happiness, of sharing something which they will relish forever in their lives, something which is, or which was, away from the world of pain, sadness, and violence. And see students, at last it was written, or it is written over here, better to say, your loving Jim. So at last he had written his own name and your loving, addressing to his own wife, or with respect, or making her address, he wrote your loving Jim. So he had written his own name, and all these things were told to his own beloved wife. Thank you students. Next day we are going to start part 3. Have a nice day.